Alrighty, another day, another chapter, and you know the story by now. But there is an announcement that I would like to make. I will be uploading the full versions of completed series up onto the second channel, so that'll be one audiobook with all the chapters. That's going to be put onto the second channel for all the series that I've done that have an end. So, if you haven't already, head over there and subscribe, because there will be more content coming through on that side. One big chunky video for those that like that sort of thing. Just a quick shout out to the T5 peeps. Bob the Dragon, Cat Crab Lobster, Data Magnet, Dark Machine, Bezic, Try Again 95, Pudic Yol, Astrea the Dreamer, Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Ithilia, Meridian 117, and Jordan Bucksmorm. Thank you very much. Anyways, onto the story. A Brood of Two, Chapter 2, Once Bitten, Twice Shy, written by Faulty Logic Engine. The sun was rising on the fourth day. Bitey had been dreading it. It was a mistake to save the human. The questions, the constant questions. If he wanted to help people learn, he would have been born a worker, and his clack would have self-assigned themselves a teaching job. Bitey sighed. At least, it was better than the teasing. No, we don't all share one mind. Only the members of a clack do. Even then, it's only pheromones, specific jitters, and intuition. He looked down at the relatively diminutive human. Samantha leisurely strolled out of the front doorway of the building with the speaker strapped to her back. She fiddled with one of the earpieces and the headset that she was wearing as it translated Bitey's jitters. And we don't simp for our queens, whatever that is. He struggled to pronounce the sounds of the distinctly mammalian word between his more natural insectoid chittering. The Jax delicately clambered out of the house through the presently absent second floor, his footfalls landing with faintly echoing clacks as his chitin met the tarmac. Regardless, we think you are avoiding our questions, Samantha, accused Bitey, his 6 translucent eyelids closed slightly to approximate a wince as he stared down at her. The human looked away as if not to meet the gaze of the alien. I don't know what you mean, she replied coyly, with the barely concealed sarcasm. I am merely an aspiring xenoanthropologist asking some questions about alien culture, she proclaimed whilst beginning to walk down the broken street. Bitey was about to call her out in the statement before his thoughts stumbled on a particular word in that sentence. Aspiring? Are you some kind of student? The Jax watched with surprised delight as the human flinched slightly. He had been waiting for something to use against her constant teasing. It would explain why you keep acting like a spoiled nestling. Bitey jeered as the massive strides carried him to a moving human. Sam groaned at the insinuation. You sound like my dad, she scowled. I am 18 years old, not 8. I am an adult in every regard. She pointed aggressively at the massive alien towering over her. Bitey recoiled away from the thrust-forward hand. I won't have you trying to pull seniority on me too. Bitey could smell equal amounts of amusement and irritation coming from her. It was merely a joke. We didn't mean to assert anything, he assured her. Bitey decided not to bring up the matter of age again, ostensibly to prevent future outbursts from Sam. Thankfully, it was because he knew her teasing would only increase if she found out that he was only half her age. Relaxing his posture, he stopped walking and stared directly into Sam's eyes. Back to the topic at hand. Samantha, he began, his translated voice coming through calm and stern through the headset. How much of our water did you drink last night? She scratched the back of her head sheepishly. I don't know, about a liter or so. The same amount of water that would have easily lasted Bitey nearly a week. But she would need it every 8 hours. Before they even met, it was already half empty. Do you need it? Bitey queried. We can't sustain the rate of consumption for more than a week. Sorry, I'm not adapted for desert environments, even if we are in a city. But it's fine. I know where to get more. Bitey looked at her with suspicion before he spoke. Water is imported on starships. My nest aquifers are most likely vaporized, and we don't think that there will be much water left in the Yelene survival suits. We understand that they are a rather hardy aquatic species, but currently any suits around are probably a little He trailed off whilst looking at the mangled and desiccated corpses of several lean mercenaries strewn about at the storefront across from the pair. "No, Bitey, no. We just need to find one of their aquatic habitation tanks." Bitey focused his gaze back on the human and tilted his head in confusion. "I overheard it from one of my captors. He said there's a bunch on 100th by 57th block. Thankfully, the comm station computer had a map of the city." She chapped on her now wrist-mounted omnipad. "It said that it's about a few miles north." The Jacks stared blankly at her as she started hiking up the small sand dune that had built up on the street. "They don't just live in the suits," he muttered to himself. "I heard that," Sam said smugly, tapping her headset to indicate it picked up his low-pitched chittering. "I'm surprised you didn't know. Maybe you need to go back to school." Bitey clacked his mandibles in annoyance. "Each member of the clack doesn't know everything," he retorted in his mind. "He knew. We just needed to communicate." His thoughts trailed off. There wasn't a clack to communicate with. The sinking feeling came back. "You okay there, Bitey?" He could smell a hint of alarm coming off the human companion. "You're looking a little distant. We can stop for a second if you want." The Jaxian snapped out of his stupor and translated voice vibrated through his sensory spines. The horrid feeling subsided after a few moments. I am fine," he finally responded. As he started following the human, the scent of distress pheromones in the air subsided. The complex was gargantuan. City block after city block of 2-story reflective chrome cubes stacked 8 stories high. An endless mess of connecting tubes, airlocks, and suit dressing stations. The delicate and carefully considered craftsmanship of the architecture stood in stark contrast to the brutalist and purely functional concrete buildings that made up most of the ruined city, though it hadn't saved it from the devastation of the Chaxis assault. Numerous sections had been blown open by explosives, or else had weeping holes carved in by heat of concentrated plasma streams. Cascading detonations of ruptured generator stations had caused the collapse of nearly half of the habitation chambers into shattered piles of scrap metal. The disproportionately large and deliberate nature of the damage indicated that the Chax task force had definitely known about its purpose, even if Bitey had forgotten. The 2 travelers progressed into the ruins, despite what remained of the main corridors only being slightly larger than the enormous Chax warrior. Bitey comfortably scuttled along their length as if they were the tunnels of his old nest. Weak strips of sunlight dimly lit the seemingly endless walkways, filtered through cracks in windows or broken ceilings. The pair's feet clicked as the hardened plastic or chitin met the rough ceramic floor. Bitey hated the faint smell of burned metal that seemed to exude from everything the elite made. Yet another reason to dislike those repulsive creatures. Habitation chamber after habitation chamber displayed the same red symbol above the airlocks. Critical leak after critical leak. The remnants of any water being contaminated by fluids from broken coolant lines, or else swimming with toxic algae as they multiplied in the stagnant sunlit puddles. Eventually their wandering led them to the center point of the complex. A gargantuan circular chamber 200 meters wide with walls made of glimmering purple-blue alloy. Supporting beams carved organically upwards from the marble floor. The center was dominated by a circular arrangement of habitat chambers linked by airlocks and equipment storage rooms 150 meters across. Each was labeled clearly in galactic basic. Dazzling sunlight flooded the chamber from the cavernous opening in the ceiling. Bullet-ridden Chax corpses lay broken amongst the rubble that had fallen in with them. Bitey couldn't identify the clack the warriors belonged to. The characteristic faint orange stripe that ran from the top of their thorax down to the abdomen, however, marked them as part of the Amber Brood, a marking he too possessed. "And there it is," exclaimed Samantha triumphantly. Bitey traced her gaze to the one cube at the far side of the room, facing slightly away from her. He had to strain his eyes to see the sliver of a green light coming off the side above the door. "Go fetch us some water. I'll go rummage around these storage rooms for anything useful." Bitey nodded in agreement. It was odd that she was the one giving orders, but they were reasonable. There was little point disagreeing just to establish authority. His long legs carried him across to the aquatic habitation chamber in short order. He observed the door for a moment to decide his next move. Messing with the airlock too much will only cause us to lose much more of the water source, he reasoned. He looked around for a better entry point. A ladder, about the right dimensions for a human-sized being, led all the way up to the top face. A maintenance hatch, perhaps? Sheer metal and 2 stories tall. A ladder too small for him, so climbing was off limits. Bitey narrowed his eyes as he determined the exact height of the cube. He was stubborn. He had agreed to the plan. He would see it through alone. The human shouldn't do everything for him. With his 1 4-clawed forelimb, he took off his fusion rifle and carrier pack. With practiced flicks of his claw, he undid the latches on his battle plate one by one. The armor fell to the floor with a thud as the interwoven fibers absorbed the shock of the metal plates. Bitey stretched every weary muscle in his being. A few ligaments in his missing right forelimb also tensed. It had nearly grown up to his elbow. The pale white carapace of the new tissue barely distinguishable from the naturally dark yellow hue. The whole thing would grow back within a month if he fed himself well. Taking deep breaths from his abdomen, he kept his eyes focused on the top edge of the cube. He sunk low to the ground with all 4 legs. Oxygen-rich blood flowed into his relaxed leg muscles. The muscles tensed. Like a release spring, Bitey shot straight up into the air with a monstrous power. A single leap was just enough. His forward pair of legs shot out in conjunction with his forelimb to latch onto the ledge of the habitation chamber. Almost right in front of his face was the circular shape of an access hatch. With negligent ease, he hoisted himself up and onto the top face. The hatch had a keypad adjacent to it, locking it with several mechanical latches. Bitey wasn't going to bother with the key codes. He tensed a series of muscles in his forearm. A meter-long biometallic talon flicked out from a concealed cavity on the underside of the limb. With a few powerful swipes of the rust-colored blade, each latch was systematically cleaved off. Flicking the talon back into his arm, he reached his clawed hand down to open the comparatively small hatch. The scent of fresh water crashed against his senses. Another ladder descended a few meters down before meeting the waterline. He couldn't see the bottom of the chamber, only the dark blue murk. In a fluid motion, Bitey removed his water canister hanging from his neck and lowered it into the blue pool. Bubbles escaped from the canister as cool water flooded in. "Come on, one of you has to be an idiot." Samantha had walked past about a dozen sealed doors already. Each required a keycard. A keycard she rather unfortunately did not possess. In the near distance, she could hear the odd thuds and clangs coming from her big friend. She stopped at a door number 13 and smiled gleefully. A storeroom door with a keycard graciously left in its slot. How thoughtful of them to leave such a wonderful gift. With mocking grace, she opened the metallic door and plucked the card from its slot, squirreling away her veritable skeleton key into a fanny pack. The waft of air seemed warmer than it should have. Weren't these chambers supposed to be cold? She brushed it off. Light fixtures on the ceiling flickered to life. Several alcoves in the wall were occupied by empty Yelene survival suits, and several rifles lined up against the rack on the left wall. Samantha sighed. She hoped to find some kind of food. Not that she needed it. Bitey had hundreds of kilograms of rations in his carrier bag. His processed fungus blocks certainly were edible, but they tasted exactly like old shoe leather to her. A week of nothing but that would drive any human to insanity. Sam still couldn't understand how the chacks scarfed them down so happily. "Maybe Bitey would enjoy nibbling on my dad's old hiking boots," she giggled to herself. She had one last look around the room before she prepared to leave. It was then that she noticed the shine. Her eyes snapped to the matte grey floor. She had missed it on her first sweep of the room. There was a puddle. Then another. And another. They were small but numerous, the kinds of water splattering that she would make coming out of a shower. She traced her eyes upwards to the alcove behind the splatterings of water. The empty alcove behind the splatterings of water. It was missing a survival suit. Her eyes widened. "Crap!" was all that escaped her lips before a sound ripped through the massive chamber a moment later. Bang! End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.